What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Deceptilab. And this week, I couldn't actually do my weekly live stream. Normally, I'm doing a live stream around this time, but I'm actually traveling today because I had a death in the family. I lost my mother-in-law this past weekend. But I pre-recorded the topics I was going to talk about, and today, honestly, we're going to be talking about the new endurance bots. So that's right. For us on the Decepticon side, we're going to take a look at Wildrider, do a little bit of gameplay, and the Autobot counterpart is going to be Bluestreak. So if you're preparing for the endurance event and you want to see some more information on these bots, you came to the right place today. And we're also going to talk about the newest set of war effects. And they actually are entering Transformers Earth Wars today. So we'll take a look at those, some bots maybe you can use to try to capitalize on the war effects, and just some of the controversy that's come along with those as well. So as always, we're going to treat this just like it is a live stream. I actually got the live chat running for anybody, so if you got any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I am going to go in and take a look at this week's newsletter. So let's hop over and look at that. All right, and here we go with this week's newsletter. And I had to do a little bit of a different format. The link from Space Ape was a little jacked up this week. Um, so I had to actually mirror this from my computer screen. But anyway, it's week 3 of the saga. Um, and so this week they're going to have the Halloween event. And so usually the Halloween events are pretty good. I mean, not just the event itself, but just like the bundles and stuff like that. So more to follow on it. But this is a 10K event, individual type, 10 prestigious, and they say you can win up to 10 times your spectral chest, ghostly chest, and eerie chest. And so each one is going to have different prizes in it. You can actually see the charts below. But in addition to that, you'll get up to 2.5k 4-star shards, 7.5k 3-star shards, and 30k premiums. 20 million of your alloy and energon, and then 150 of spark and combiner spark. Still looking for some combat spark. If you saw my stream last week, you kind of saw how the combat spark played out last week. Um, just really looking for some more personally, but it is what it is. That's the event we get this week. Um, you're also going to have for those spectral chests, each one of those is going to contain 25% odds of getting either a bot power core or 20k spark, or you get a 50% chance of getting 5-star shards, so that's good. And then they do, in the ghostly box, they address a little bit of the 5-star combat shards, so you get 50% chance at those, or you get a 25% chance at a building power core or combat spark. And then those eerie boxes are going to have 25% odds at either 10 of the or 13, 20k combat spark, a G metal power core, or a gold power core. So really random in what you can get for the events, but not too bad. Let's see, your battle zones are going to be typical. And this time of year, you got a lot of different stuff going on. So they're doing some surveys for Black Friday, and then there's also going to be some general questions just to try to see what you think about the game so far. They'll be giving 5 random players 500k 5-star shards when you answer the survey. So there's going to be a little bit of a drawing there. And let's see. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on, like I mentioned earlier, but here's a breakdown of all the war effects. I'm not going to read all of that off right here. I'm actually going to talk about that later on in this particular video. But you can actually see some of the effects in action they've got. Looks like you got Power Glide down there using, the fire ability. And when you use a fire attack and destroy something with it, then you're going to have a little bit of AoE that's going to go to the surrounding topics. And as you can see in that demonstration, it's not anything too crazy. It's just a nice little bonus on top of some specific buffs that they're going to do for fire and electric. You can actually see Bumblebee running that same test and how the electric is going to spread off to the next target, and it's also going to do some additional damage. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on in the video. And then there's going to be a winter skin competition on, so that's going to be for Sentius Magnus and Sentius Malice. And so for all of you artists out there, get into that, and that's going to be another one when you get a month of free Cyber Pass, 500 5-star shards or 500 combat shards. So for all you artists out there, go for it. And then they talking about season 21. There's a chart there for the rewards. All right, and we went over this a few months ago when the VIP program changed. So the monthly spending for the current loyalty program is going to change a little bit. They're going to add in some more tiers, and I know there was a little bit of a backlash the first time because they were like approximately 5 tiers at the time, and they actually shortened that down. So they're going to be adding a $50 tier, 199 tier, and a 299 tier, and so along with that, you'll start to get more prizes. Now it looked like to me, I didn't do too much research on it, but it looks like that tier 1 and tier 0 didn't really change. um, I know the last couple of times, because I did the endurance event, mine's actually went up a little bit, but now you're gonna have some additional tiers. They're gonna give you some additional prizes. And I always remind people this, that since they started this program, um, it's really supposed to be an incentive for spending, but by no means do you have to go through and all the way up to tier 5. It's just like whatever it is that you spend on the game naturally, just go ahead and continue doing that. And then wherever you land, then you can get additional stuff for it. And I personally don't have too much of a problem with it, with the exception that, shortly before the program changed, Space Ape did. Um, Try to entice more people and bring on board more people into the program. But knowing that this is the program that we got now, that's what you're looking at, a couple more tiers. Make sure you check out all of your content creators. The official ones include Engineer Hoist, myself, Soldier, and Sunstreak Owaza. And for all you guys up there, especially since I'm not live this week, if you are a content creator and you're in the chat, man, make sure you let people know so they can go in there and take a look at you guys' stuff as well, because the unofficial content creators, I try to watch them as much as I can, but those guys are really doing some fantastic work out there. So make sure that you guys take a look at that. Let's see, you got your saga schedule. Right now, we're at week 3. You get the big endurance event next week. And so we're going to be talking about, like I mentioned earlier, the endurance bots. They're looking really good, man. I actually like this set of endurance bots. I wish that I was getting the opportunity to participate in endurance, like complete endurance, I should say. I'm still participating, but I wish I was getting a chance to complete the endurance this go around. But I'm just going to be a little bit too busy with everything that's going on. Community corners got some nice artwork as always, and then we got some bug fixes. So Buzz Strike, and this is actually, well, they didn't just say Bug Strike. It should be Buzz Strike and Lancelon. But there's a problem with the hack community not working, which honestly, that was the big part of that particular bot. And I was actually the one that caught that. Like when it came on to the live server, it just wasn't working properly. Then when I went back and saw that we had another build on the test server, it was broken on it as well. So that is supposed to be fixed this Thursday. Um, Even though I had a couple of people tell me theirs was working properly. So I don't know where that bug is, if it's just certain conditions that had to be met, but apparently Space 8 figured it out, so we'll take a look for that tomorrow. Windstrike and Baru, they had issues where where bots were getting stuck. That's been resolved, and in addition to issues with minions getting stuck and bots getting stuck with LOP and Avocado Megs, so look for that tomorrow as well. And let's see, and they said the stuck case related to Bashbreaker because of one of his attacks. The flag now makes it so he is no longer causing bots equipped with him to get stuck, um, and they will no longer target aerial targets. Uh, so they got a lot of stuck cases for Czar, Trip Up, Slugfest, Roller Force, and Bash Breaker. They're supposed to be fixing those as well. So I am happy to see that they are, at least in recent times, starting to prioritize some of the bug fixes in the game. I think that's the first place you start. And I think you got to work on the bug fixes quickly because there are times that, after a bot gets stuck with a bug for a long time, especially with combat bots, people just say, well, you know what, I'm not using that. And they never come back to it even after the bug fixes take place. So if you have a bug fix, let Space Ape know and put some pressure on them about it to go to complete it quickly because there's always that obligation to try to make more content and everything like that. But you don't want really really good content like for the longest time with Trip Up not working properly and Trip Up being a pretty good combat bot, Roller Force being a really good combat bot. People just weren't using them, and it sucks because people just like, oh man, that's broken, and I'm never going to use it again. If you miss one newsletter or you miss and nobody tells you it's fixed, they don't come back to it in a lot of cases. So, but Space Ape is supposed to be streaming tomorrow, and so hopefully they'll be in there talking about something cool. Uh, I should be I should be stationary by then. I'm actually traveling to South Carolina tomorrow for the funeral, but I'm going to try to catch their stream, and if not, I can catch it later on that evening. I just want to check out and see if they're talking about anything cool, especially now that they only stream once a month and they missed last month. So, really interested to see what they have to say. And if you got additional questions, ask them. Don't ask me. No, I'm just picking at you. But no, that's the time to do it because that's the time that you're going to have their attention the most. So definitely ask them on the Space Ape stream. And that's all we have for the news today. So let me switch over to the battlefield. We'll talk a little bit about that new bot. All right, guys, so welcome to the battlefield. And today we're going to take a look at the new endurance bots. And so we'll start off taking a look at Wildrider. So I already showed you guys. I think it was last week's live stream. I showed the just the artwork piece of it, everything like that. But this is where we got Wild Rider. Honestly, looks pretty good. I know there was some controversy because they already have Breakneck in the game. I mean, essentially it's the same character. But I do like, especially in the automotive form, his alt form looks really really good. He is going to be a gunner class bot. Right now, we're looking at the artwork of the 5 star, and it's offering something kind of unique to the game. We'll talk about his statistics and everything here in a minute. But before we do that, let's actually go over and take a look at Bluestreak as well. And so here I got the 4 star Bluestreak. One of the characters I know that the Autobots were looking forward to for a while, so I was actually glad to see that he was entering the game. He's got a nice alt mode. It's actually got a real good robot mode as well. And yeah, man, these are the guys that are coming to the game. So let's swap over and take a look at the stats. All right, so we're going to take a look at the stats for these endurance bots. So I'm looking at the 5 star Wild Rider. And here, what we're taking a look at first is we'll take a look at his base stats. So his damage is pretty good. His base damage is 797.8, and then you get the gunner class bonus. It's going to add another 15%. That's going to carry him up to 917.4 damage per second. So pretty substantial damage. Just starting out, this is the maxed out version, level 75 star. And the health, because he does so much damage, the health is a little bit lower compared to some of his gunner class counterparts at 13,250. But one of the things we're looking at is I think we made him a lot like Breakneck, and and how we apply them. But the ability is a little bit different. It's going to add something, a little bit more of an element to make him more usable against more stuff defensively. So his ability is called Crippling Shot. And so I've got it up there at the ability 11 right now. So that tooltip is pretty straightforward. It says the shot's going to deal 6,782 damage to the main target. And then part of the ability 11 is the ability is actually going to carry over to some area of effect. So you're going to have an additional 0.25 to nearby. It says ones. It's supposed to be nearby foes, and it's going to reduce their max health and speed by 30%. So this is going to be one of those things that you can use against some of those rush tanks. You know, the rush tanks primarily are the ones that have that max health boost, and kind of wanted something to combat that a little bit of a counter to that, is what the play testers were thinking. Just because now we're starting to get into that territory when you start talking about bots like Headstrong, and you start talking about I mean, to a certain extent, you could even say that for Bludgeon and Ironhide, but you know, it just got to the point where playtesters were concerned that, or a few playtesters were concerned that these rush tanks might be a little bit overpowered. And so now you kind of got like a counter kind of in place to affect that max health. Now, I will say I was a little bit of opposed to the next part of that tooltip where it says that max health and speed is reduced for the entire battle. I think that's a little bit of overkill. So you can use one shot on a bot like light pipes or a bot like headstrong, and now it's max health. If you start using repeat abilities, you know it's not going to work anymore for the rest of the battle. I think that's a little bit overkill, but you know, ultimately that's what the apes wanted to do. They want to do something to say, hey, there's a counter in place, and that'll give you a reason to pursue this bot, which I totally understand. Now, the key thing here is that each consecutive use of the ability is going to increase the damage by 50%. Now, you got to look at where it says in parentheses that it's up to 2 times. So you're not going to just keep spamming the ability, but it is a powerful ability. Right now, I've got it with the volatile mixture core installed. So I'll actually pull that off so you can see the stats without the volatile mixture core. And, you know, it brings it down to 5,872, and then we'll put it back on because that's what I want to actually do the demo with. And honestly, man, the bot looks really good. I've never really been. I'm not gonna say I've never been a huge like breakneck fan, but I was earlier in the game. But then I don't know. I just started to see a lot of gameplay that I really didn't like a whole lot. Everybody's focused on shooting build bots from half the distance of the battlefield, and I was just like, man, like there's so many different ways to take build bots out. Never really saw that, but you know, for breakneck, that cost is 3+0. So I understand why people wanted to do that, but I just felt like you're just burning a bunch of ability points, and a lot of times for build bots that weren't even a factor for your play, or build bots that you could wait on and then attack that later on once you get closer to end range. So there's that aspect of it. There was a lot of talk about using these build bots, using this on build bots. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but we'll go over to the battlefield. We'll take a look at him on a base trial and see how it goes. All right, here we are back on the battlefield, and I'm going to go into my base trial, and we're going to take a look at the ability of Wildrider. Now, I did add the 5-star maxed out fracas to him, which took his base damage was normal damage to 1,211. And so we'll just go in there into the Prime League hard mode against my own base just to take a look at his ability a little bit and see what it can do. Now I will say this, on repeated usage, and we had a lot of talk about repeat use. We started off with this is 5 points plus 0, and I was just like, man, that's gonna be spammable, and a lot of us agreed. I think we're the happy medium now. So I'm actually going to target this shock tower that I got up here. It's got the Micronus core on it, and we'll take our first shot. And what you'll see is you'll see that it has the animations there for the surrounding area where it can do the damage. So this is going to jump up in damage as I go use repeated shots. And with the ability 11, it can do damage to adjacent targets. Like I said, at that rate of 25%. I think at this point, this is a little bit more balanced. It's not going to be spam happy, but as you use repeat uses, then and you gain that 50%, then you can start doing more damage to more targets. I think it's going to be good, and I actually want to take a look at him versus a max health boost for one of our rush tanks. So let's take a look at that real quick. So now we're going to take a look at Wildrider in the outpost. So like I mentioned earlier, he's going to reduce that max health boost by 30%. So I want to start off with an example of what that max health boost looks like for Bludgeon without being hit by Wildrider. And we'll start there first. And so when you look at his ability, you can see that it's going to be an 80% max health boost. With Wildrider, that will reduce it down to 50%. I'm going to let him take some damage first, and then I'm going to move that over. And you can see how large of a jump that is when you look at his, if you look at his bar, his health bar. So I'm going to let him get hit, and I'm going to wait for his shield to drop. And I think that's part of the reason why some players are saying that he's OP, just because he will use that health boost, and then he will also, at the same time, have a shield. And so this time around, that health boost is going to be a little bit less. It's kind of hard to gauge, though, if you try to use them defensively. But what I can see coming in the future metas, I can see a lot of people already use Smokescreen and Breakneck in their outposts. I could see him being like in a rear outpost somewhere. Particularly for players like myself, like I tend to focus on letting my Titan hit the base, and so for me, late in battles, I need that health boost to try to go in there and protect the rest of my team, because my Titan ultimately is going to end up losing that battle. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at as well. But ultimately, the way that we designed the bot at this point, I like the bot a lot more on offense, just because of the AoE attacks and stuff like that. But you have to be focused on, for something like that, not making it overpowered. So let's go over into some regular battles. We'll take a look and see how Wildrider performs with a team. So now we're going to take a look at him in some prime zone battles, see how that turns out. Um, Honestly, man, like I like where the bot's at. I think he's a little bit more balanced. I do think that we could have used a little bit more work on how we wanted to try to focus on the counter for the rush tanks. I don't think him alone is going to do it, but I think that if you use a combination of certain bots in the outpost, I think if you go use Wildrider like in the outpost or something like that, reduce that max health boost, and then you let them sit back there and snipe, and let um maybe let Breakneck sit back there as well. Think you're gonna be onto something. But let's see how he looks when you put him in a team. So I'm gonna start down there with my bludgeon down there on the bottom. Follow up with the team, and at this range, let's try hitting one of these build bots. Now this isn't a high level base, so it's gonna take the build bot out pretty cleanly. But that additional damage boost you get is going to be pretty good. Um, and I think that opens up some combos opportunities for you as well, because here, like I got Slipstream that I want to use that combo a lot, and I've been using Terramander for a lot of these because, as you saw my last live stream, we were talking a little bit about how Slipstream is able to give you some of that damage reduction as well. So if you now you got a couple of alternatives with Slipstream and Air Raid. I love to get those alternate ways to trigger your um, your detonation. And so here, oh, okay, well now my Terramander is stunned. I can alternate between Terramander and Wildrider to try to go use that Slipstream detonation. As soon as I can get unstunned, and then you can see my sharks actually did a little bit too. So if I were to use this bot, I'm actually not gonna be able to go for this bot. I'm gonna be a little bit too busy this go around. But I think that it is a good bot. If I wasn't as busy, I would actually go for this bot in the endurance. So definitely something to think about for a lot of you guys that are already breakneck fans. You're really gonna like this bot, and it's just adding a nice little twist to it. I know some of the criticism that came up in playtest was, you know, really about the apes recycling ideas. Sometimes those small differences they become big differences, and so I'm a huge advocate for if you got something that players already enjoy, then go ahead and try to build on that and try to add another element to that. In this case, it'll be the damage multiplier, and it would also be the fact that you are going to get just on top of the damage multiplier that you're going to get some AoE, which I think is going to be really nice. But it looks like my screen got stuck here, so I'm going to back out of this for a second, and we will go on and kind of summarize what we talked about. But yeah, guys, overall, I think this is a really, I think it's a really good bot for the endurance event. Uh, if I wasn't going to be so busy with other commitments, I would probably go for the bot. It's always good to just have more long range options. And to be honest with you, and I've been having this talk with a lot of people, um, I like just different bots for different situations. I already kind of expressed one where I was like, if I was using that air raid or slipstream combo, then I definitely like having Wild Rider along for that because you know I, once I start using that ability one time, that second time and those repeat times, I know that increase is going to allow me enough to damage things that I need to damage. So for me, and I actually want to let's take a look at this on the shielded cluster real quick because I think that that's always one of the concerns we're going to have. I'll actually move that cluster forward and get the shield generator down here since I already got the shock tower with the Micronus, and we can actually take a look at that before we move on to the next topic. But yeah, I definitely think that that's going to be one of the things that people are going to focus on. I think that if you are using this ability multiple times, then you're going to wind up in a situation where you're going to be able to trigger some other things as well. Um, that's the primary use that I'm thinking of right now because that's how I built my team. But even when you get that shield in there, that first shot is going to be all right. And here it actually takes 3 shots, so it's not going to be overpowered when you can do too many things alone. But then when you start getting into those combos, I think that that's when the bot is really going to show up. Um, so you might not necessarily use it directly on the shielded area, but I'll run it back real quick and I'll show you how I think you will be able to use it. So what I think is going to be a good way to use it is that you will actually go in and use some of your unshielded targets because especially a lot of these bases now they're starting to be backloaded, so there's going to be plenty of opportunities to try to combo uh, later in battles, kind of like I was showing earlier. So I think it'll look something like this. Granted, I moved everything to the front for demonstration purposes. I think if you find something that's unshielded, and actually, let me take the icons down. I think if you take something, or even though technically that's still shielded, as long as you take something that's unshielded, you can still use that combo to kind of weaken your defenses and bring them down. That was only my second attempt there, but you'll even see here, now that I've run that ability a couple of times, I'll use a shock tower up there at the top that's not shielded after Slipstream drops her bomb, and then that'll be a good trigger point that you can use to try to take out some of your unshielded defenses. And with the shock tower being the higher of the health point defenses in the game, I think you got you a real winner there. So ultimately, I think it's a really good bot. I wish I actually had the free time to, because usually I'll take Friday, I'll take a day off, and I'll hammer out like maybe about 50K on that Friday and then kind of chill the rest of the week. Um, obviously still hitting points because you still got 37K you got to hit for the, but you can split that up between 2 days and it makes it a little bit easier on you if it's a bot that you really see a value. Last endurance event, I actually went for junk heap and got junk heap. Um, this time I just don't have the time for it, unfortunately. But yeah, overall, pretty good bot. And I think that for those of you that are pursuing them this go around, you're really going to enjoy them. But if you're watching this live, go ahead and let me know in the chat what your plan is for Wildrider and Bluestreak. Are you going for the 4 star, the 5 star? And if you're not watching it live, let me know in the comments if you're planning on going for them and what you think about the bot so far. But all right, cool, man. We're gonna go move on, and we're gonna talk about these new war effects that are gonna be coming to Transformers Earth Wars today, and some of my thoughts on them. All right, guys. So next, I'm gonna take a look at the upcoming war effects, and this was some controversy about that, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I just kind of want to list out what it is we're talking about so you can actually see some of the war effects that are going to be coming into play today on the screen. And more of the focus this time around was about fire and electric abilities. So for your bots that do fire damage, there's going to be a 10% damage increase, and that's going to be restricted to the offensive side only. The focus here was to try to make war a little bit easier going into this set of effects. So Dale actually got to take the lead on this one when he had a little bit of help from some of the other developers. Well, I think one other developer he was saying on Discord. But yeah, some of the focus is just to get um, some more just balance offensively. So basically what's happening with fire is there's going to be a 10% damage increase on the attacking side, and there's going to be a 10% electric increase as well. Now for fire, if the building's destroyed, um, the building is going to explode, and that's going to do a little bit of area damage as well. And then electric is going to have something similar, where the electric is going to spread the surrounding buildings. It's going to add uh, basically some damage, up 20% more damage as well. But the key thing here that I started looking at, and some of the play testers kind of pushed for this, was for effects to extend to some of the other leagues. And so when you go to the Platinum and Canominus leagues, um, there's going to be a 10% buff for fire and a 10% buff for electric. And then Cybertron on the defensive side, it's going to do the same thing, 10% for fire and electric, but then there's also going to be a 5% DPS and health point increase on the defensive side. Prime League is going to have a 15% health point and DPS on the defensive side. And Then for hard mode, you're gonna add an additional 10% HP and DPS on top of that. In addition to hard mode having the outpost combiner have a 25% health boost, and like I said down there, it's gonna be an additional 10% for outpost bots and for in regards to their health points and damage per second. So overall, it's not too bad. I'm gonna flip back over to the game screen, and like I don't have the war effects running right this second. I've actually had a chance to test them out a little bit myself, and I think the key focus here was not having anything that was overly powerful. You don't want to put yourself in a position where things get too easy. But well, let's talk about that too, because in play testing, honestly, on just Discord as a whole, a lot of the controversy that I saw yesterday after Dale released the war effects, a lot of the talk was about, well, for particularly from like the top 5 alliances in the game, they're saying, oh, it's going to be too easy. It's going to be a race to, 12,000 points, and that's all it's going to be. They're going to, the guys going to have 4,000, 40 players, and all 40 of them are going to get 300. Which, I think that, and honestly, I'm just going to come out and say it. When we first started working these war effects, and I mentioned this a couple of streams ago, a lot of the concern was with regarding certain bots. In particular, we were talking about when you go into your gunners and you started looking at bots like Octopunch and Sea Spray that, oh, well, you can't give a boost to Electric because Octopunch and Sea Spray are just gonna, people are just gonna spam them, and everybody's gonna get 12,000 every single war, which could be true. I think that what you'll see is that players will start using some of the other build bots. They'll start using the anti EMP build bots a little bit more to try to prevent such things like that. In addition, if you look at the current meta, and in the current meta, you'll see a lot of the same style of bases. And I'm gonna look at my teammates here on the playtest server and see who has something set up like that. I believe Prowl's got a base like that. But what you're starting to see is you're starting to see a lot of backloading and all the resources and stuff in the front. And so that in itself kind of, actually, that's not his base that's got that. I'm gonna go find one for you so you can see the example while I'm talking about it. But you're starting to see more of the same types of base designs, and I think, granted, I have seen people just spam sea spray in those situations. But what I've also seen, but those are all resource buildings, which is one of the reasons why I always wanted to, well, in recent days at least, wanted to go give a couple of buffs to resource buildings. And I think that changes gameplay up a little bit. We were talking about the other day, and it looks like I got pulled out of the test server for a second. Well, but I'll continue talking to you guys. One of the things that I was looking at was, could we do like a type of power core or something like that to resource buildings? But there's so many resource buildings that could be overkill. So that balance is really, really delicate. But what I have been saying consistently for the last few sets of war effects is that maybe we should go give them a buff. I mean, we've given them a buff in the past where they had more health for those, and it actually made things a little bit difficult. They actually added an element of healing to surrounding objects when you destroyed them in the past, and I'd like to see something go in regards to the resource buildings. I think that'll get us where we're trying to go in certain regard. But I also want to see war effects cycle around a little bit more frequently. So my fear now isn't that it's going to get too easy, because I mean, let's be honest, it's not everybody's going to use those bots. Now, do I believe that top players, they all have those bots maxed out? Sure, but like realistically speaking, how frequently are top teams just facing off with each other if they don't plan those wars out themselves. Now, part of the debate on Discord yesterday was more about that it's going to be a race to the 12,000, and then that turned into Dale saying that, well, we're going to monitor it for a couple of weeks, see how it goes. Depending on how it goes is depending on whether we bump the effects up or not. Which honestly, it's always been like that. Like every time they do war effects, we test them in the test server. But you know, let's be honest, players can be relatively creative in this. And it seemed like everybody changed their base around a little bit this time because I'm trying to find one that's got the resources in the front. But honestly, I don't know if that is going to be an actual. I don't know how often these teams are actually facing off against each other. Now I will say my buddies over there in Main Horde, uh, they were facing a lot of hard wars lately. But for me, um, I'm over in DJD, and so you were talking about being a top 10, top 15 alliance, and it's been very hard to just catch on to a good competitive war. And honestly, that extends down to the lower levels as well. The lower level players are telling me, for the most part, they say, hey, we're either finding wars where we're completely outmatched, or we're finding wars where we are not where it's not a competition, where their alliances have the upper hand. So it's really tough to kind of gauge. I think that I think that I think the current war effects are fun. There were some complaints that the war effects were not strong enough. But one thing that I've put out is this: every time that there's a, and I looked at this, I actually went and did the data. I did my homework on this a couple of weeks ago. Whenever there is a change to a HQ phase, typically the game gets easier before it gets harder. And that's what I'm looking at right now. So and I'm gonna post these war effects up there one more time for everybody to look at. But they're trying to add something to offense because what I believe is going to happen, I believe that in playtest we're going to start looking at phase three soon. Phase three is going to be difficult. We don't want a mass exodus. There's already a lot of players that's like, look, man, wars are too hard right now. And ironically, some of the same people that are complaining about wars getting too easy is some of the same people who are also complaining that they're also complaining that wars are that, that you got to use a lot of your ore. You got to use a lot of everybody's not hitting it the first time. And Space Ape is saying through all of the stuff that they looked at so far, Space Ape is saying that their data is telling them that players and top teams are scoring around 1,100 points. They're not going in a race to 12,000. Oh, it's not 1,100, 11,000. They're not racing to 12,000. So, which they find that to be a happy medium, and I'm inclined to agree with them that, yeah, that's a happy medium to be around 11,000, because what you don't want is your wars to turn into something where, oh, well, it just depends on who was online first, and then people start using coins, people start having all kinds of other issues. So that's the aspect that we're looking at. And so I understand where Space Ape is coming from when they say, now we just want everything to be, around that 11,000 range, where people are dropping some points, and those drop points can cost you. So we'll see how it goes. Um, and Looks like I'm not finding too many of those backloaded bases up there on the test server right this second. But um, actually, I know who might have one. But yeah, let me know in the chat. What do you think about what you see about the current war effects? I'm not sure if the war effects will be changed by the time this video comes out. They are supposed to be released today. And I'm actually doing this a little bit earlier in the morning, this recording, so they might already be out by the time we get to that point. But either way, we're still working the same way, in theory, in terms of the war effects and the war bots. All right, so let's go back over to the game screen. We'll take a look at some bots that I think will be viable in this next meta, or not in this set of war effects, I should say, because ultimately I wanted the meta to change. Um, but then you do run into those problems, and you guys have heard me talk about it at length. How I wanted more water bots so that water could pair with electric the same way that electric pairs with fire. Um, but I do think that Deathsaurus, especially with some of his recent reworks, with his ability 11 coming into the game, him having a little bit more shielding, I think that he's going to be a more popular one if you want to try to go get that electric boost. So I think that'll work out really well for Deathsaurus and Star Saber. Um, and one of the things that has come up a lot is, for me, I got bludgeon, I use bludgeon, and so for me, one of the things that comes up when you compare him to Pipes and to when you compare him Pipes and Headstrong to Bludgeon and Ironhide is the damage aspect. So I think if you go give a 10% boost or a 20% boost, excuse me, to Electric, I think that helps out with the ability damage and helps close that gap a little bit when you're comparing Bludgeon and Ironhide to Pipes and Headstrong. So I haven't done the math on it yet. I had done a little bit of the math the way that the bots are currently, and because Bludgeon's ability duration is actually longer, his ability duration is 14 seconds. Um, I think that plays a pretty huge factor into this electric buff. So I took a look at it a little bit while I was in while I was doing some of the playtest wars. I think it worked pretty well. Um, and it is what it is. I don't think it's anything too powerful as far as the war effects. But bludgeon when I'm being electric. Uh, I think this gives you a gateway to looking into the electric meta a little bit. And honestly, if we decided to actually use more electric bots, uh, I think you would find some value there. So that's what I'm looking at. I actually am curious to see if more people will actually start using full tilt at this point. Full tilt and brawn were endurance bots in the past, and everybody thought it was a little bit too niche. But with the amount of damage that you can do, as long as you have anything stunt by an EMP effect, that's a pretty low cost for 12,612 damage. Now, I think one of the things that deterred people is that, shock towers that have a lot of health, you can't obviously use EMP on shock towers and you can't use it on MDS. And so I think a lot of that MDS focus kind of took it away. But then you can figure out, like, well, Slipstream has like an ability 11, Air Raid has an ability 11 that allows stun, and then you can combo this off, and you can destroy a lot of stuff for you can destroy a lot of stuff for about 7 points. I'm actually gonna try it out real quick right now. Um, but then you're gonna go get a damage boost on top of that. So when you look at trigger points, we were just talking about using Terramander. We were just talking about using Wildrider. For those who already have Brawn and Full Tilt with an electrical boost, does that move the needle a little bit? uh, just trying to capitalize on those electrical war effects. So let's go take a look at how that's going to look gameplay wise. And let's see, we'll go back up to the top. We'll pull full tilt and stick him on the squad. And we looked at this when full tilt first came out, and I do agree overall, it is kind of a niche bot. But if you're already using the bot that has electrical damage, EMP damage, or not even damage, just EMP period, because like Slipstream and Air Raid, they're not doing electrical. They're just doing they're not doing electrical damage, they're just doing stun. But once it's stunned, then you can go in there and kind of add in that extra element of damage from full tilt and brawn. So now you're looking at a couple of additional bots that might be able to go in there and use for trigger points for some of these combos. So I'm going to use Slipstream with good range. And actually I want to check. And the problem I've always had with full tilt is his range was so short. But so say though I can't take out a shock tower. What I can do is use full tilt to take out objects surrounding it along with Slipstream. And in this case, I actually got him attacking other stuff. But yeah, here, and I just really, and I said that when the bot first came out, that range should have been longer so that you can make some awesome combos. But now you're going to have an additional damage boost into the game because of the war effects. So even with this being an easier base, when you start to get some of the harder bases, maybe you still have that bot in play to be able to use as that trigger point. So overall, I think that's going to be the way to go. Um, and it's a nice to have. If one of the things that came up in playtest is like, well, I'm not going to change my bots for these war effects. Like it should make you change bots and stuff. But some people are just going to try to capitalize. Or some people put some bots on the shelf because they're like, hey, they don't do enough damage. But now maybe you start to think about some of these other bots with the electric and the fire buffs. So most of us are already using fire due to the fact that it does give you that 20% increase with acid, but now you can make that a 30% increase. So some of the bots that you're already using, if you're already using like a T2 Megatron, you know, he's gonna be stronger, which is cool because he's got a cost of 7+2. Optimal Optimus, same thing. If you are one of those guys that like to use scavenger and rust dust, once again, it's going to make it a little bit easier for you. And like I said, the game usually gets easier before it gets harder. And I think that, especially with it being around the end of the year, I think that Space Ape is going to start trying to roll out another phase of HQ18, and it would make sense and it would be consistent with things that I've seen in the past. Like typically when they started doing phases, they always want to try to go make that end of the year push, the end of the quarter pushes. They'll come up toward the end of the year as well. Um, and to be honest with you, when HQ18 phase 2 came out, they made wars easier temporarily, and the same conversations took place. The same conversations about, hey man, we're going to be we're gonna be in a race to 12,000. And even then Space Ape said the same thing. They said, hey, we're gonna look at it. If it becomes too easy, if everybody's scoring 12,000, we'll change it down. And man, and honestly, they stuck to their word. I think to some regard we're not learning patterns that Space Ape has a tendency to use. And those patterns actually, when you understand those, they kind of calm things down a little bit. Because when we first started talking about electrical buffs, they were one of the things we were concerned is it Scrapnel and Bumblebee. You're gonna be able to spam them, but maybe that's a problem with the bot cost as it is more so than it is with the war effects. And I think that if we ever get to the point when we want to go into an electrical meta, then you're going to have to try to adjust some of the costs for some of these bots. And a lot of people aren't going to like that because that's going to be considered a nerf. So that's what we're kind of looking at with the war effects. Um, Honestly, I hope that I, I, I I'm pretty neutral. I mean, it probably sounds like I'm heavily in favor of the war effects. I honestly wanted to be able to get more out of the electrical side. The fire side, I honestly didn't care about. I think the fire side, even though it is cool and it is going to make things easier if you use fire bots, um, maybe some other play comes into, and some other factors come into play. Like for example, for me, I've been talking about this for a while. You know, players stopped using Fireline and Top Shot after the nerf a lot. And for me, I look at Fireline. You can see that I got him up there on KO. I used them as an opportunity to self combo because if I use Knockout's ability, if I use it directly in front of him where he's going to be targeting Fireline, then I can go in there and capitalize on the acid, the 20% acid and fire damage increase, which now that's going to be bumped up to 30%. So now I can get those walls down faster. I can get the outpost bots down faster. Um, I think Fireline comes back into play with Top Shot. And to be honest with you, the fact that Fracus by far is the best combat in the game. Fracus is Fracus is that dude. But when I look around and I see people using a 2-star Fracus in war and not a 5-star Fireline, just because the bot was nerfed, like I'm looking at it right now. So now you're getting like a 18% boost if you put it on a gunner. It's going to have long range, and you're getting that value every second for 5 seconds when you go use that fire ability, which is also going to get the 20% from. It's going to get the 20% from using acid as well, which mostly everyone in the game is using. So when I look at like Fireline and Top Shot, one of the things that I look at is like, hey, I can capitalize on that. So that means if I use that Alchemist Core, like I'm using on Knockout, you know, then I'm gonna constantly be regenerating. And I've shown that a couple of times on some of my previous live streams. Like I actually got it moved right now to another box because I was doing some testing with Double Dealer. I was actually working on my Acid series the other day, and I actually got like 3 different videos done. Once I get them edited, my plan is to, after I come back from my trip this weekend, to go in there and put those together and release those the following week. So those, half of those are done right now. But yeah, like I use this Alchemist. I get AoE from Fireline. I'm using the ability. I'm doing 4 times damage on, or 3 times damage, excuse me, um, from Knockout. And I think for some bots that we're already using, you make them a little bit stronger. Um, Honestly, a lot of players in a lot of the different leagues are starting to struggle a little bit as the wars got harder with Phase 2. Um, I do think there's a little bit of an obligation for players to try out new stuff because, you see players using the same tactics over and over again, but, you know, try to use something to try to get a little bit extra out of it. So in this case, it'll be Acid Storm. I'm kind of wondering when the new war effects, because technically, even though Acid Storm has the acid portion for anti-heal, his damage is technically fire. And so, that could be something where he's going to do a little bit more damage and he can actually destroy a little bit of the stuff faster. Like right now, I use Acid Storm primarily on a lot of build bots. I kind of use them as an alternate trigger for my slipstream strategy. But I can definitely see using Acid Storm and Slingshot uh, for a little bit more damage, since the damage is a little bit lower compared to a lot of other bots. I could see for a while I was thinking about considering using Brawl again, but I don't like Brawl's range. But with that G1, you can get fire damage. So that might put us up a little bit further. That'll put us up in that 10K range. So there's going to be a lot of options out there if you want to make minor tweaks to your team. I don't think Space Ape is trying to make this into like where they're overhauling something. I mean, we haven't had any war effects since February of this year, and now we're in October. So you're talking about a total of like 8 months total when we haven't done anything with war effects. So, and that's kind of where Dale was talking about um, on Discord yesterday, where because a lot of people was like, well, why are we doing this? Nobody's asking for this, but sometimes you just got to go make a move that might make the game a little bit easier, particularly when you're going into potentially a new phase that's going to make things harder. With Thundercracker, Thundercracker is actually straight up EMP for his ability. And honestly, his ability does quite a bit of damage because it's like because it lasts so long. Because that lasts for 26.1 seconds. That's another one I might look at and running some strategies with him as electrical takes that increase. And dude, honestly, he can destroy even at some of the higher levels. He can destroy a lot of stuff. So you got some options out here for how you want to play it. Once we do have the effects up and running, I'll probably go run some war attempts on my channel so we can just to see just to see how it's turning up. I hadn't been in anything except for Prime League in quite some time, so I'll be able to even on some of the easier wars. Some of these bots I've already got at a high level, and I might give them a spin just to see how they do. But all right, guys, let's go head back over to the Deceptilab, and I'm gonna kind of wrap up for the day. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing some traveling this afternoon and tomorrow morning. But let me know what you think about the new endurance bots, and also let me know what you think about the new war effects. Always, I'll be back live streaming next week. I actually will be uh, back home in Delaware in my Delaware studio for that. So, playing for that next week, same time, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And hopefully, I see you there, and I will see you guys on the battlefield. Freezius out.